The course is designed to explore the relationship between, on the one hand, gender, understood as a social construction of masculine and feminine norms and roles and identities, and then work on the other hand, and work understood broadly to include both paid employment and unpaid employment. More specifically, we're going to focus on forms of work where we tend to find women overrepresented, or where if men and women are engaged in the work, there's often different kinds of cultural expectations for how they do that kind of work. Most obviously is the case of domestic work or housework. We find that women still tend to do more of that than men. So we were going to explore sort of the origins of that phenomenon and ask questions about its impact on men's and women's relationship to waged work, to family, to one another. Students are not expected to have any prior background in gender studies or women's studies. And so we're going to start the course sort of setting the groundwork by focusing on some of the key categories, and most importantly, the category of gender. There are a lot of interesting debates about how we even conceptualize gender. Is gender something that's innate or acquired? Is it something that's been exaggerated or underestimated? You know, what is the nature of gender and the social production of these identities? So once we have that groundwork, then we're going to go, in each class we'll focus on a different form of work. From domestic work to different forms of industrial work to different forms of service sector labor, and then other forms of employment where gender helps organize the practice, like mail order brides and surrogate mothering. The last section of the course, we're going to focus in for a few weeks on one kind of employment, and that is sex work broadly and prostitution more narrowly. And again, there's some really lively debates about how we understand that. Is it an example of women's oppression or as a viable employment opportunity? How do we understand the movement of people across borders to engage in sex work? Is it best understood as trafficking or as simply another form of economic migration? So we'll finish with this, what should be a lively debate about sex work. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that it was suggested that we try to aim for about 30 pages a week for readings. I really tried to do that. And many weeks it's going to be right about then, but there are going to be some weeks where the reading will be a little heavier. It's very engaging reading, so I don't think that'll be a burden, but because it's so crucial that students come to class having done the reading so we can really engage in some discussions about it, that's something to keep in mind when you're choosing courses. Again, it shouldn't be burdensome, but there are some weeks where it'll be a little bit more than that. So hope to see some of you next week.